Hi everyone, hi rollers. I already have Professor Gerdes here with me. Welcome, Professor. Nice to meet you. Well, we first probably gotta, of course, we gotta say hello to people. Just a second, I gotta pause myself there because I can hear myself because the tab was opened, the stream was opened in the tab. That happens here. Okay, so guys, it was super sudden. We started planning to make the stream like a week ago, but just 2 days ago or just one day ago, we agreed to do it on some of the weekdays, and professor asked me yesterday, so maybe tomorrow. I said okay, and here like 2 hours before the stream, we decided okay, maybe in 2 hours. Let's do it in 2 hours. So it was pretty spontaneous, but I like it. I like to be spontaneous, and some good things are usually appearing from it. So I just wanted to ask you, Doctor, to introduce yourself, to tell the people who might not know you, though I think most of them know you. Anyway, it would be awesome to meet too, because I don't know much about you. I've been watching a few of your videos, but I wasn't digging deep just because I don't have time to watch that many videos. So please tell us about yourself. Uh, just a second. Okay, I'm sorry, but people in the chat are saying that they don't have your sound. I'm sorry, you was muted. For some reason, my desktop audio was muted, and since your voice was going through the desktop audio, you was muted. I'm very sorry. Doctor, can you please repeat everything from the beginning? It's not that much. It's like 1.5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
So can you hear me now? Are
Yes,
they okay with me now?
think they can.
Okay. Yeah. So like many others, Jake Bro, Vlad Vexler, others, I was doing something completely different. The war broke out, and then the only thing that I wanted to focus on was what was going on here because it's terribly important, right? So before the war broke out, a week or so before, I remember sitting in a cafeteria with my colleagues, other professors, saying, "Yeah, I don't think Putin's going to do anything. He's just saber rattling. He's just trying to get some kind of concessions." And then this was the 20th, maybe the 19th, we were having this conversation. And then I was at an academic conference when the war actually broke out and the news is on and Putin's crossed the border. I'm like, what happened? and so I was paying very close attention to what was going on. And then I heard, as I was watching the news, Zelensky say reading. I think I was reading an article where he said, I need ammunition, not a ride. And I was thinking, like, who is this guy? Oh, that's right. He was the guy, the connection with Trump, with the impeachment, and started really researching, like, there's some spine here that you're just not seeing. And within 3 weeks, I had written an ebook about Zelensky, about his background, about who he was, about how he came to power, and that sort of thing. And then I spent time updating that ebook for the first 4 months, almost 5 months of the war. By the summer, I realized, nobody's reading this thing. I mean, it's interesting to me to keep this, but how do I have a greater effect? So I had already been doing YouTube videos that were about the war on my leadership channel, and like people, that crowd wasn't necessarily wanting to see this. I mean, some were, some weren't. And so I separated and created a brand new channel by the summer, and just started. I was already doing the research anyway, so I figured, why not just, maybe I can have some effect by, if 6 people are watching this video, that's better than the 1 person reading the book this week or the 2 people the next week, right? I mean, that's just how it went. And so it just built over time. And what I realized was that Zelensky was almost like a metaphor for the nation. And I didn't get it at the time. I thought he was a very special person. And then I realized, no, that's just how Ukraine rolls. And, one of my viewers said, yeah, Russians are peasants, Ukrainians are Kazakhs. And I thought, oh, I got the pronunciation from you, by the way, the Z in it. And
Exactly.
we're talking to Johnny Pierce about Christmas. Yeah, Ukrainians, and it made sense, right? Like the Maidan made sense. And where it doesn't make sense to Russians to throw off, or to not, there's just a different mentality. I didn't realize that until I was talking to Starsky, and when I got to interview him some time back, and he was just like, yeah, everything that we do, we'll just go back and improve it, and blow it up, we'll just do it again. And I was like, yeah, there is something culturally different about Ukrainians. So I've come to really appreciate Ukrainians in the process here. And it's not something that, as an American, I was paying attention to or understood, but I've learned a lot. You spend a few hours a day for 680 some odd days reading about things. You learn things over time. And but I spend most of my time trying to look at. So I started looking at, like, who are the big players, right? Like, what are leaders doing? Why are they doing it? Because I'm not a battle maps kind of guy. That's not what I spend my time on. I spend my time on mostly news and Russian propaganda, trying, like, why are the Russians saying this? What are they hoping to accomplish with that? Because that's more within my strengths, right? That's within my wheelhouse. And so that's where I spend most of my time, although I've been diverted by other things, YouTube, taking Warthog off and things along those lines. I got involved in that because it was important that we don't get picked off one at a time. So that's me. That's my background. Could you do the same for viewers on my channel to explain who you are? Because I want to introduce, like, one of the reasons I really wanted to do this was because if they don't know you, they ought to know you. And I want to make sure that they get to see who you are.
Okay, thank you very much for telling us your story, though I still have a lot of questions to you. I will tell mine. I'll try to be brief, but this is not my strong side. My strong side is to be deep and very, very long, like for 5 hours of streaming or something like that. But anyway, I'll try to do it in 5 minutes, let's say. So I was born in Avdiivka, Donetsk region. It's a neighboring city of Donetsk. They together form a huge one. The size is bigger than Kyiv, and Kyiv is huge. So I grown up there. It was like I was born in 1991. So I have seen only an independent Ukraine, and I was growing in Ukraine. I knew no Soviet Union, and I was lucky, I guess, because my parents and my grandparents, they weren't really nostalgic by the Soviet Union. Well, some of them were, but it changed. Okay, but that's not the case. I would say that my teenagehood and my student years, it was just amazing. Life in Donetsk was just perfect. Living in Makivka, we were hanging out in Donetsk all the time, just driving around there, here and there, and the future was really bright there. I finished the university, graduated, and I started working by the profession, which was like firefighting automatic systems in big objects like aqua park or some business center or some hotel. And we had many objects, and it was so damn interesting. Everything was so promising for the future. And then in 2014 Russia invaded and everything went to shit. Everything became just, it disappeared, became dead. There was no prospering Donetsk anymore. Donetsk was becoming a ghost of itself. This was actually, at that moment, the most developing city in Ukraine, even more developing than Kiev. Kiev was the capital, but Donetsk was really attracting businesses because it had many industries in it, and that was attracting many investors, so it was prospering. The city had many attractions, many what is the word? Shit. Yeah, that happens with me as I'm a Ukrainian and not a native speaker.
Your English is better than my Ukrainian, I can tell you that. So can my audience. I slaughter Ukrainian words and Russian words.
That's totally fine, because people in the world must know English, as English is the universal language, or universal, like the whole universe must talk English. No, it must not, but historically it is that language. So I strive for perfection, and I try to know it better. So if you have to correct me at some point and help me with some words, please don't stop yourself, because I love to have those corrections.
I think it would be wildly hypocritical for me to correct anybody's pronunciation on anything, so don't worry about that.
Okay, not only pronunciations, some words I'm missing. Okay, I was talking about Donetsk, and I wanted to say that we had everything there, and life back then was pretty much I don't know, people who were struggling in the beginning of 2000s, they were becoming a middle class there in 2013, 2012, 2013, so it was just amazing. And when Russia came, when their tanks and multi-launcher rocket systems came in, they started shooting from the blocks. Later in 2015, when I stayed in occupation, when I lived in occupation, they were just standing some howitzers, putting some howitzers in the yard of the next block to mine. So it was not next to my house, but in the yard of the next house to mine. They were putting the howitzers during the night and shooting those howitzers, I think, to Avdiivka. They were shooting Avdiivka. Avdiivka is pretty close to Makiivka. They are neighboring cities. So in 2015, when Minsk 1 was signed, Russians were, following it and started shooting those howitzers in the night. And that was terrible. When you wake up at night because all of your apartment is shaken and you gotta run to the bathroom and sleep for a few hours there until it stops, because it's not just that they're shooting and it's scary. Something might be coming back, because the backfire is something that usually happens when it goes to artillery fire. So, luckily, not even once I was hit by that. In 2014, when it was beginning, all of it was beginning, I've seen some pictures of, the destruction from shelling, of people lying down next to the bus because the bus was hit and people were just dropping off dead out of there. I've seen some pictures of that in 2014, and I never believed that it was Ukraine. Even if Ukraine was backfiring back then, and I think it was happening. But I have heard many times from people who were observing it themselves that they've seen that Russians have been shooting Donetsk and Makiivka themselves. So that shit was happening, I'm sure of it 100%. And there are proofs, and that you probably have seen that Russian GRU, if I'm not mistaken, the intelligence agency of Russia. He is testifying now in the IRC, right, International Court, and he was actually confirming that. But let's get back to my life. So first, in 2014, I was traveling out of Donetsk and Makiivka and lived in the western part of Ukraine for 3 months. I couldn't find work. It was pretty hard back then. We were living with some relatives. It was also hard because, you know, the domestic stuff can be even tougher than war sometimes. Then in 2014 and in the end of it, we have known that my wife's mother is again away from the country, and she was leaving our 2 cats, to someone else and the apartment. And we had an apartment, we had 2 cats who we needed to look after, and we decided to get back to the occupation. We actually, I didn't realize how bad it's going to be to live there when I was making that decision back then. But I was really... okay, we lost Professor just now. Just a second. He's joining back. You're back?
I'm back.
Awesome. I was really ungrown back then. Is there a word, ungrown?
Not grown up?
Not grown up, yeah. I was already 21, but I think I was still a kid. I stopped being a kid at my 26 or something. Probably even more than that. But anyway, I wanted the comfort zone. I had my parents there. They also stayed in occupation, though they hated that so-called DPR and Russians all the time, and they were pro-Ukrainian. And guys, there are still a lot of people who are pro-Ukrainian living there in Donetsk and Makiivka, and on all occupied territories that were occupied since 2014. They are just not talking about that much because it's super dangerous for them. Mm-hmm. So, there was a comfort zone. We had an apartment there. I had the support of my parents. I didn't have a job for some time. This is why it was pretty important to me. And I couldn't find job in the free part of Ukraine, not occupied. So I went back. I get back to my old job, though it was also a ghost of a job because all the objects that we were maintaining, they simply closed. And, you know, like I think 70 to 80%, no, not 70, 60 to 80% of all businesses there, probably even 80, died. They simply stopped existing. Yeah, the place was like, I don't know, it was hit by some mass catastrophe, like some storm, you know, when everything's being shut down, closed and abandoned for a month or so after that. But it lasted for years. Like only in 2016, 2017, some businesses started rising there, but unfortunately they were brought from Russia. You know, all that, there were a lot of products that were of very low quality, and I was traveling to Ukraine every few months, like every 2 or 4 months, sometimes just to buy a good food, you know, buy yourself some good stuff for a month, then go back to Ukraine. And my father was actually traveling pretty often because he was a driver, and he was driving people from the occupied territory to the free part of Ukraine. Now he was actually, that time it was easy to cross borders. Some people didn't know that. Some Ukrainians right now don't know how it was back then in 2014. And I usually don't talk about that because I think people know that. But it was easy to cross the border. Well, easy physically, but mentally it was super hard because every time you got to cross that roadblock of DPR, they were getting through your things. They were sometimes undressing you, like not fully, but one time they made me get off my boots and checked in them if I wasn't hiding anything. They go through your phone, they go through your messengers. So if you have any Ukrainian position, you had to delete everything. By position, I mean my views, the world view. You had to delete everything, any messages, any conversations in messengers, any photos of you being like with the Ukrainian flag or something like that. So you had to be totally neutral, you had to be like 100% civilian who's not interested in war, who's the small people, all that shit that Russians are trying to make everyone. We are the small people, we are outside of politics, as they say, every time you try to speak to them about their regime. they just avoid it. They just escape by saying, we are small people, we are not interested in politics. Yeah, these are the phrases you probably heard those many times.
Self-preservation to some degree as well, right? I mean, they that's a good way to not get in trouble. Did they check you on the way in or out, or both?
Both were checking. First, you had to. Sometimes there were 3 blog posts. Not sometimes, all the time. So first blog post, they weren't checking you that much. They were just maybe opening your trunk, right? Is the word? Yeah. They were getting through your bags. Then on the second one, they were checking it a bit more, but not that much. But the third one, it's just from DPR side, so-called DPR. So they were then checking you, your documents, your things, what else they were checking? Your phone, everything. They were asking you questions, trying to find out your position or something like that every time. And after that, you came to the Ukrainian blog post, first of them. That was also the document check, the bags check. Ukrainians were never checking my phone, I think. They were sometimes checking me like in the SBU database if I'm not involved in something and do I have a record of some kind, but they were never getting to my phone. So in time, all the procedures from Ukrainian side almost vanished. So it was all from that DPR side, and that DPR side was, just like the Russia itself, super corrupt, and they were always trying to get some of your things. If you were going back to occupied territory and you were like bringing with you some food, some good food, some sweets, they would definitely say, I want one of that. And you should have given that to them because they would cause you troubles if you don't. So that was always happening like that. Then after they started to make some things like bribes, sometimes they would cause you trouble and make you give them the bribe. Well, the Russian way, typical Russian way. And yeah, that's how life was for 4.5 years in occupation, and being inside of it was even worse. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I should take a pause or maybe not. I don't know. I'm talking for too long.
Stay with this because this is really interesting. You're the first person I've ever talked to who was in the now occupied areas. When did it really tighten down? Really tighten down? Was it just after 2022?
No, it was after COVID started. They really stopped letting anyone in through this line of conflict. I would call it that. The front line, yeah. And they totally closed border from the DPR side, not from the Ukrainian side. Ukrainian side was always willing to let anyone in, but those assholes closed it. Yeah, actually, then you could still get in there, but through Russia. You had to cross the Ukrainian-Russian border, go around, like from Kharkiv region, for example, then through Belgorod. You had to go around and came from Kursk or Rostov-on-Don region, something like that. And it took 24 hours to get there from Ukraine. Yeah, it was crazy. I never wanted to get back. I was lucky to escape in 2019. as I realized after living there for 4.5 years, I realized that there are no perspectives for me. There are no future, nothing. Like, if you don't want to support this ugly regime, then you're just not gonna get anywhere there.
So was it a gradual decline, or was it immediate when, like you talked about the 80% of businesses that caught my attention closing down? Like, how do you survive on that? What like, you don't have money to buy or sell or trade? Did it become a welfare state largely?
Well, yeah, something like that. But as I was saying in the beginning, 80% of all businesses died, and they were building up their own businesses, their own, like, I would say they were parody. Do you use this word?
Parody of, like, it was
Of a business, yeah, like,
yeah.
this was a parody of a business, not the real business, not the real Ukrainian business, because in Ukraine we have such a quality services in here. You probably heard of that. Probably Greg told you that services in Ukraine are just above any European country level. And then you go to Soviet Union. It felt like you live in Soviet Union. So even though I was born in 1991, I have known after, in 2015 to 2019, I have known what it is to live in Soviet Union, because with every year, like, mentally and ideologically, they were going into decay. They were like going back in time. Like in 2014, it was like 2014. Then in 2015, it was already year 1990. First it was faster, yeah, then it was like 1980s in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, it is hard to explain, but I'll try to do it. So you have all your basic human rights restricted. You have no freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. Okay, you know what I mean. Freedom of speech was totally.
I support your right to say it the way you want to say it.
Yeah. I just like to have fun with words sometimes, and I usually make it up myself when I'm just running around errands. I mumble something under my nose, and phrases like freedom of speech rise there. So yeah, that happens. Okay, so no freedom of speech, because if you say something like that, that you are for Ukraine, you stand for Ukraine, you might be just taken into the basement. It was called Zonka. Thank you very much for 50 gifted memberships. This is very generous. Thank you. Yeah, I was distracted by, like, amazed and distracted. Thank you. So getting back to my story, this was called there in the basement. No, to the basement. To be taken at the basement. Yeah, the phrase was like that, if you translate it correctly. So they were taking people to the basements, and in those basements, if you were like openly pro-Ukrainian, they would torture you. They will probably, not probably, some of the people were just shot in the back after that. This was happening not only in Bucha, this was happening since 2014. The stories were hidden better those days, and it was much easier to hide them, as this territory was totally controlled and it was never deoccupied. This is why.
And the rest of the world, frankly, wasn't paying attention until 2022.
Yeah, and that's such a tragedy, So this is why I was almost always silent about what I think about that ugly flag waving around, and I always wanted to burn it since the very beginning, since they hang it first time. Those two flags. First is a Russian flag, and the second one is that one made up flag of that made up republic. That made up republic was a police state. They had police everywhere. Police was just stopping you at the road 2 times per day, checking your documents, trying to. Once they even took my driving license. They took it away for me forgetting to put the lights on, because it was pretty light because of the street lights. You know, when you're driving, sometimes you can't even understand if you have your lights on or off. So they took it, and it took months or two for me to get it back, but I got it back anyway. And what? And that police stopping on the road is just the best of it. Like, what they were doing, you could sit in the restaurant with your family, friends, it doesn't matter. They entered the restaurant, people in masks, like some special forces of police or something. They are entering, they stop the music, turn on the lights, and say that everyone should show their documents. This was happening, well, I would say, I wasn't visiting restaurants many times, but like a couple of times a year I was getting into those checkups. They were checking documents, they were asking questions. They could stop, that place from continuing. They could maybe get out in just 20 minutes, and we'll continue. But the mood was already not that good after that. But anyway, next thing is the constant curfew. It was like 10 until 10, from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. I think, for the first 4 or 5 years. And only in 2018 or 2019 they made it smaller, like made it shorter, not smaller. They made it from 11 p.m. Until 5. And yes, everything was closing really early. For Ukraine, it was super unusual. Like we could spend all night somewhere in the club or restaurant here, or we could order food at night. This was totally normal. And then you have everything restricted. You have sometimes your bus getting back home at 7 p.m. And if you didn't have enough time to get into that bus, you should call the taxi. So this was... everything went to restriction, Then agitation. Those banners, when they just remade the Soviet banners, the ones like, "Did you join the Red Army?" Yeah, so they were everywhere. Or like, our hero, Saint Zakharchenko. You remember that thug who was one of the first heads of DPR, Zakharchenko, his name was. He was killed by his own in cafe, and there was some bomb there planted under his table. And, another one was killed in an elevator. His name was Motorola. But I wanted to say that they were, making heroes out of them, and it was so ugly. And everywhere you travel, you had to watch those banners. You had to put the flag in front of your store or shop or coffee place or anything or restaurant. You needed to put the flag of that, of course, damn Republic.
So it strikes me that they're trying to project power, and while they're trying to project power, if you look at it properly, they're actually demonstrating weakness. If you're in a free society, you recognize that. Like, why would you force me to do these things? Or like your curfew, you're checking the thing. It's intimidation. But what are you afraid of if you don't do these things? Like, why are you? And so my observation has been that Russia has been re-Sovietizing, not in a Marxist ideological way, but in an authoritarian way. And what you're describing here, and I've not heard this description before about the next so-called People's Republic. What you're describing is what's also happening in Russia right now, as they're clamping down. People going to jail for holding up a blank sign, at a protest. Like, look, I have a blank sign. You're going to jail for that. What did I say? Well, yeah. You're denigrating the military. How? So, but when you're doing that, it screams weakness, and it's like they don't. It's almost like an analog of this is Putin seems to think, and so did the leaders in the four so-called new oblasts of Russia that are still part of Ukraine that only Russia and North Korea recognizes. Like 96% voted for annexation. Okay, in any democratic society, if you get 60%, it's a blowout, right? When you're at 90%, you know you're in a banana republic. But they think that makes them look even better, right? So it's really bizarre the way that they think about this kind of thing.
The thing is that Russians really want this. The Russians themselves, not their leaders, not their regime. Russians themselves, they want the Soviet Union to be rebuilt. They want this. This is why it's okay for them. Of course, those of them who don't agree with that, they are just keeping their mouth shut mostly because they are gonna get to jail just for the blank sheet. But mostly they want this, and that's what we Ukrainians try to show to everyone else in the world. That's because you see a lot of people are still thinking that opposition of Russia will come someday. But we actually don't think they're an opposition. But anyway, they will come
well, you
to
have
Russia.
a 70-something-year-old opposition candidate from the Communist Party who has the same position on the special military operation as Putin does, because you can't have a contrary position. Like, what happens if you speak against it? You go to jail. So, yes, you know what his big issue is? Farming. He's a big fan of farming and thinks that centralized farms a la 1930s is the way to go.
Yeah.
Because that prepared them. I was talking about this yesterday. That prepared them for World War II. No, that was called the Holodomor. What? Like, it's absolutely bizarre. Like, if I didn't know that this was coming from legitimate sources, I would think, no, somebody made that up. You're pulling my leg. Certainly he didn't say that, but it keeps happening. So anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
No. You actually made a good point here, but and made me think of a correction that I must say. So the correction is not the opposition inside Russia. There's no opposition inside Russia. Of course, it looks bizarre when those communists who totally support Putin. And have you seen the latest compilation of Russian politicians on these so-called elections saying what they really think when they're being asked, are you hoping to win? And they are laughing. They start laughing. Then they start, no?
I don't want to die.
Yeah, that one. What are you, an idiot? I don't want to die. Yeah, all that stuff. I was talking about so-called opposition outside of Russia.
Okay, gotcha.
So they, when we know it and we see it, we Ukrainians, that when they come to Russia, they will just restore Russian Empire. They will try to seem democratic for some time, just like Putin did, but they will go after the will of the people, and the will of the people is to rebuild Soviet Union, is to keep that empire intact, keep that empire, the word was expanding. Yes, keep that empire expanding, and the thing is, in my opinion, the only way to stop this madness, to stop these wars and conquering, is by creating 89 national states in Russia. As many as they have those, they call them governors, you know what I mean, like Tatarstan
you're talking about the oblast becoming
yeah.
individual countries, right?
Yes.
United States is actually, state is the term for country, and we were United Countries.
Yes.
That's the equivalent, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about a province or an oblast or
yes, and not even being united, because their unity, like federalized unity, is a fake. They are united as an empire, in fact.
Yeah, for force.
Yes, by force.
Yeah. I don't know. I have mixed emotions about that. I hear people say that. I want Russia to lose, but be unified so that they can pay their reparations. Listen, hold on. Listen to what I'm saying. So that they can pay their reparations. Ukrainians can get their children back. War criminals can be brought to justice. All those kind of things need to happen. And unless they're unified or still hold together as one nation, it'll be very, very difficult, especially to get children back if you're having to cross 89 different jurisdictional things. Maybe afterwards you can do whatever, but at least in the near term, that
Yeah.
I think would be make it very, very difficult.
The problem is they need like 3 generations to be living in those national states to that imperialism totally
Yeah,
got out of their minds. That's the
I
thing.
understand that.
Yeah, that's cool. We just need to speak about it, and we need to speak about it constantly because there's a chance that some people who still think differently, as you and I, right? They will understand this, and they will realize that there is no chance for us to not be invaded again without Russia falling apart.
So, here's a scenario: a unified Russia collapses economically, or is beaten, or whatever, has to go through the reparation process to rebuild everything that they destroyed in Ukraine. Has to give their children back to Ukraine. Has to, like, all the things that need to be put right, and then you allow them to have the free elections, saying, you remember the argument with Donetsk and Luhansk and whatever, was we want everyone to have free elections to decide for themselves. Then you, as internationally, you know, approved and done correctly, hey, Siberia, do you want to leave? Hey, you know, this region, do you want to leave? That region, do you want to leave? And let them decide for themselves. I would have little problem with that. But after we get through reparations and getting that done, like that oil money is going to have to rebuild Ukraine on the other side of this, and gas money.
Yeah, that's actually a huge riddle for us to solve, how to get our reparations and getting Russia to become 89 independent states, national states.
Anyway, we're digressing. You're telling me some fascinating stuff about what life was like in
Yeah.
the former so-called DPR, and what else can you help? Because my audience has never heard anything like this before. I haven't heard this before. I'm engrossed. Please continue. Help me understand what else was going on at the time.
Okay, so I was thinking about my work for some reason. Let me tell you about this. Maybe I'll remember something. First, I was working. I started working. I continued working at the same place I worked. But as I've told you, most of the business is closed, and we didn't have enough clients. And after 2 months, they told me, "Sorry, but we are, redirecting to Ukraine." And actually, my boss went to Ukraine because they had a unit in Kiev, the unit of their facility, but they were starting in Donetsk. This is why they had much more objects in Donetsk. So they went to Kiev, and I stayed there without a job. I've spent, I think, 3 months without any work. This was really not easy to find some decent work there, and I decided to work somewhere, just somewhere. And I found a place that was selling cell phones, actually, smartphones, cell phones. You know, those button phones. They are still pretty popular there in so-called DPR, and I was selling those also. So I've spent, well, I actually haven't told this ever on my streams, so people will hear it for the first time. So yeah, I was actually working at the, as we call it in here, the muff. This is like the small, like container with a window. In this case, it was a door out there, but there was no heating, no toilet. This wasn't
Just a little shack, a little kiosk.
Yes, kiosk. Yes, yeah. So I worked in that kiosk. I must say, my place, the store I was working at, was in the very center of Avdiivka, and a lot of clients was flowing through that, and I was the best seller for 2 years as I spent there. They've seen that, and other sellers said, okay, this dude is earning too much while we're not earning anything. Let's switch with him. Let's switch places. And they started sending me to some depressive kiosks somewhere at markets. We have those big, like, you probably call them, like, okay, crowd markets. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When people are just bringing their stuff and selling some very unquality stuff there, also like some Chinese dress, Chinese clothes, Chinese toys, all that stuff. But it's a big market, and on that market there was that kiosk when I wasn't selling anything. When I was sent there, I was just losing the day and money, and yeah, this was starting to become depressive. And the thing is, the conditions there, even in the good kiosk, you remember I was telling that there was no water and no heating. So in winter, I had that small heater that was working almost all day, and still it was crazy cold, and I was working at my winter coat, and I was actually, yes, at some point my fingers started inflaming because I was constantly on the cold for a few months every day. So conditions wasn't really good, and I decided to to start looking for some better place to work. But I found myself in selling there. I've never known that I'm a good seller before that experience. So I would say that it gave me a great chance to know myself better and to learn something new. So, and I've seen in a year and a half here, they started building a good store in a good house, next to that kiosk. They started building a good electronics store. And even before they opened up, I contacted them and said, guys, I want to work for you. They've interviewed me, and in a few months. First they said, we'll think about it. And then in a few months, when they just opened, they called me and said, you're going to work for us. So then in that store, conditions were much better. And I was also started building PCs there, and this was my passion. After I started doing that, I really love a good PC, and the one that is shining, like a rainbow. I've built myself also one of those, and I was actually taking pleasure from that job, also selling some good electronics sometimes. But I must say that most of the people there, and due to the low incomes, they cannot afford a good electronics. That's one thing. That's actually the memory that I was looking for. The thing is, there are a lot of people under the, how do you call this? Okay, you gotta help me with this. There's a line of income which you can be under.
We call it the poverty line in the
Poverty
U.S.
line, yes. So a lot of people under poverty line, and a lot of people were just coming to the store and asking to sell them the cheapest thing. So that's what I can say was constantly I was observing there, that people have no money and they want to buy the cheapest thing. Situation was getting better in time as more businesses started coming in to that depressive region. But those businesses were, as I've told you, from Russia, controlled by Russians, and corruption was the main thing about those businesses. Though I didn't witness a lot of that myself, but I've heard of some. So people mostly, so my observation was that the level of incomes of people there in on the occupied territories was very low, and just numbers of them were able to buy something really good quality or something expensive.
So how did other people survive if 80% of the businesses closed and people are losing their jobs? How did they scratch by? I mean, what did they have to do to? Did you see a mass exodus, or were people just trying to create some black market something, or what were they doing?
Well, first of all, I think approximately 1.5 to 2 million people left only to Ukraine. The other 500,000, or maybe even close to 1 million people, went to Russia. Also, those who chose Russia and were probably already brainwashed by Russian propaganda at some level, they went to Russia. So a lot of people just left because they had no work, no means for existence. They went to seek for the better life. Those who stayed, a big part of them chose to join the military, as it was like stability, you know. I heard many stories. I had many clients who were coming to that store who simply went to the army. Sometimes not even because they wanted to fight for the Russian world, just because this was a stability in payment.
That's an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was thinking, as the businesses close, what you're left with are like teachers and police and military and things like that. So it's almost a sick of genius kind of move to do what they did in order to force people into that kind of situation.
Yeah, you're right. I've never thought about that. Nice observation. Well, some businesses stayed anyway. Some small businesses like those kiosks or any other like food businesses, people were trying to find ways, and many entrepreneurs were actually finding those ways. Someone started like pouring in products from Ukraine through the front line by contraband. This was, is it a contraband word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they were just, bringing stuff illegally, just paying on those blog posts, and those soldiers from both sides, they were just closing eyes on that. But they understood it too, not just earning money, but they understood that those entrepreneurs need to somehow survive, you know. A lot of them started bringing products from Russia, which was much easier, but the prices were higher. And the problem also was with prices. Everything was twice more expensive. Like food products were twice more expensive. And I see your smile. You think that this...
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about the man-made economic catastrophe that did not have to happen, let alone the political catastrophe, but like the economic level of it. I just finished reading a book last week called Nothing to Envy. It was about North Korea and just how destroyed North Korea was. Like when Kim Jong-il passed and his son, the fat kid, took over, like it was in such terrible shape that like they just didn't pay people for months on end. And so people are now trying to scratch by. The good communists that are always been like, I've always been a communist, and now they're like, okay, I've got to sell things in order to survive. And the people that survived were either got real entrepreneurial and were violating the communist tenets in order to do it, or they were just thugs who were just bad people who were willing to do bad things in order to survive. The good people who were just trying to get by would starve to death. And this was in the 1990s. Like it's hard to imagine. But so again, I'm hearing economic catastrophe in Donbass as a consequence of Russia's invasion.
Yeah. But I wanted to say that when I was commenting on your smile there, this is also the way for Russia to earn more, because everything was twice more expensive, and it was sometimes ridiculous, and of course it was, it was not very pleasant. What I wanted also to add, I forgot already, but I saw a comment, a good one, just a second. What started as Rick going to interview Gerdes become him interviewing Rick, lol. Leathercat was saying. But actually, I thank you for this because I don't have much chances lately to share my story, to like remember some new facts that I still haven't told to the viewers, to my community, and to also to you community, to your community. I'm sorry, in this case, and that's a great chance for me to share my experience because I think a lot of people, not around the world, but even in Ukraine, don't know this. And I'm talking about this with my new friends who were never there in 2014 or who were even soldiers fighting, but they've never seen it from the inside, you know? I'm telling this to them and they are really surprised. Like, what, really? And they even sometimes are surprised by the fact that you could easily travel. Like, I was usually going to Ukraine, as I've told you, to buy some products, but also to Berdiansk. I was always going there. It's my favorite town in Ukraine. I have the favorite city, which I think is Donetsk and Kyiv, two of them, and I have Berdiansk, my favorite town. As it's just amazing. I don't know. It's fantastic. I've spent probably every summer, with not the whole summer, but like 2 weeks of it, or just a week for 12 years or something. So when it was occupied in 2022, this was another, like, all the occupation was the tragedy to me, but it was a separate little own tragedy to me, you know. I even went to have a wedding in Berdiansk. It was amazing, fantastic town. I recommend you guys, when it's going to be deoccupied, please go there. I think some houses will still be intact. I really hope so. But maybe in a few years, when it's going to be rebuilt and becoming a resort again. Yeah, it's really hard to think about those times because these days victory seems so far away, considering how supported by Iran and North Korea Russia is these days, and how support from our partners is melting away or something. It's really, really worrying me for the last few
I would
months.
say it's slow, but not melting. Just give it time. The process needs to work itself out. But I'm not. I'm still very optimistic that they'll work like in the U.S. scenario, that they'll work something out.
Okay, I really hope so.
Back to your experience in Donetsk. This is really interesting. So, political support, pro-Russian political support in that kind of region. So if you look back at the polling, right, you'll see that on the western side, the Lviv side of Ukraine, very pro-Europe. And if you looked at the polling before 2014, right, very pro-Russian on the eastern side, generally speaking. Now I know that it's plummeted significantly, but how have you seen it change over those years?
So you mean like among
Like for
people?
pro-Russian political candidates or pro-Russian sentiment, that sort of thing. How has it shifted over time? Like, I know 1 million+ fled one way and 1 million fled the other way, but the mentality of people. Tell me about that.
Well, I won't talk about candidates because there are no candidates there like pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian. This was a marionette government put there by Russia, and there was no democracy there, and still no democracy for 10 years. God damn it. Okay, so about people, I can talk about people, and people there, like, I would say 70% of them never wanted this war and never wanted. They didn't care. They didn't care under what country they're gonna live, like in Ukraine or in Russia. They just wanted to be left alone, to be, to just earn, to live your simple, quiet life, and some of them stayed like that. They didn't care, and even those who sometimes went to their army, as I've told you, they were just trying to find some incomes for their families. And ideology is something that was followed, I think, by 10 to 15% of people there, and still is. They just try to show it as the will of people, of all of the people there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very smart move that worked pretty well in 2014 and led them full significant part of the world. Like, some people decided to become part of Russia, just like in Crimea. There was no will of the people. It's always those damn 10%, and they just isolate everything. They just show the picture. Russians show the picture that they want everyone to see, and they are really good at this. They put billions of dollars in their propaganda, and when you don't have money for that, you won't have a chance against their propaganda machine.
Right.
And Ukraine didn't have any money, and Ukraine actually had a lot of pro-Russian politicians, and I would say a very unprincipled president back then. He settled with Putin. I really I wouldn't say I hate him for that. I wouldn't say I because I can to some extent, or at some extent, I can understand why he did what he did, because standing against Russia like we stand today, back then it was probably not possible. We didn't have such army. Back then it was in a very bad shape, but he gave up some territories of ours, some cities and towns anyway, and I'll never forgive him for that. But probably...
We're talking about Poroshenko, right?
Yeah, Poroshenko.
Yeah. So, but he seems to have been, in this war effort, picking up his piece of whatever he could do. Like, he seems to have been trying to be helpful to Ukraine since then.
Yeah, I think he's not like completely say that he betrayed Ukraine. I won't say that, but he didn't do enough, and he did a lot, about his interests, not in interests. He acted in his own interests, not as a politician. It's just a simple, typical politician who is not Winston Churchill or Zelensky, who just thinks about his wealth, his ratings, just a typical populist. And that dude did that in 2015. We had Minsk, and as you see, guys, all of this leads to just another invasion. And you see...
So tell me about the persecution of all those Russian speakers.
Okay, yeah. This is a complete nonsense and the myth. We have people, and always had, who could speak Ukrainian. They could even say it without please speak Ukrainian. They would say, why do you speak Russian? Here in Kyiv, this couldn't happen actually, because a lot of people in Kyiv have spoken Russian and still doing that. I hear a lot of Russian language around, but many people after 2022 switched to Ukrainian. But back then, maximum that you could have, the oppression, that you could be asked, not in a gentle manner, but you could be asked to speak Ukrainian, and they couldn't do anything to you. And I think this is totally fair, considering that we're living in Ukraine, not in Russia, and we have our Ukrainian language as our official language. So why the hell should I not ask someone to speak Ukrainian? This was actually pretty hard to understand for me, because I was learning Ukrainian from the first grade, like from when I was 7 years old. and this was my language. I was raised as a Ukrainian. I uh, learned Ukrainian history, and Russia was. I was so lucky not to, be. I don't know, because I see some of my siblings were raised really pro-Russian. Even in school, like there were some teachers, the vatniks. You know who vatniks are, right?
Yeah.
So there were some teachers, real vatniks, who shaped the minds of those young people, and they really did some really good uh, job for Russia back then. But I had a, like, we call it классный керівник, the teacher who is guiding your class, like the teacher precisely for your class. You have other teachers, but this one is like your main teacher who you can go to with any problems. So that teacher was actually from Khmelnytsky Oblast. You know that Greg Terry lives in Khmelnytsky base. Yeah, he's based there. So she was from there. She was telling us about the traditions of Western regions. She was giving us them. I only now realized that I owe her much, and not only to her, because there were many teachers like her back then who showed us the Ukrainian way, who showed us the truth, who told us about Holodomor, who told us about. And the thing is, it was in the Ukrainian school program. It was there, but just for some reason, some students totally ignored it. And there were my siblings who were vatniks. They were raised vatniks. I don't know how that happened. Maybe, as I suggested, some teachers just who were vatniks raised them vatniks, and they were probably not giving them the knowledge about the Ukrainian history, the real one.
I'm biased, but teachers are pretty important.
Yeah.
Tell me about the how split families are, like you were just describing. Like, is it split generationally after this point of time? You started to see more and more of this, or split just geographically, or how does that work?
You mean in 2014?
2014 on.
So, in 2014, my family was divided. My grandma, my aunt, my cousin left the occupied territory. But not right away. No, they stayed too. Some of them. Okay, so it happened with many families. It happened that some stayed, some went to work to Ukraine. Actually, in my bubble, there weren't any people who went to Russia because they were mostly pro-Ukrainian, so most of them went to Ukraine. So it was like that, and a lot of people, like even husbands and wives. I know a couple, they are the friends of my parents. Wife stayed in occupation, and the husband went to Ukraine and worked in Ukraine and was coming back just for a month. Then he went to work for 3 months, and it was happening with many, many families. But I would say mostly families either completely went away. Mostly, like the older people were, the harder for them it was to leave, because they get attached to their homes, they get attached to the place, and they do it until now. You see how it's hard to evacuate some old people from many frontline towns and villages. It's just almost impossible. So the younger people were, the easier they traveled and relocated, and that's what happened with me in 2019. I simply realized that I don't want to live like that, and you see, this was a good instinct, because in 2022 I could be grabbed on the street and was thrown somewhere to Avdiivka to storm some trenches. That's crazy.
So there's a couple questions in my head here. So if you were younger, educated by vatniks, you were more likely to be pro-Russia. What about if you were older, like you remember the Soviet system because you lived most of your life in that? Were you more likely to be inclined toward Russia? How did that kind of thing play out?
Learned helplessness, you know this term, right?
Yeah, sure.
So that is the most common thing among people in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Uh, this is the most common thing about people in Soviet Union who lived, who were raised, who lived in Soviet Union. Soviet Union, tried to take any initiative from people. Soviet Union told them, okay, you see, you won't have to worry about home for you. We will provide you with home. You don't have to worry about work. We will provide you with work. This is not just communism. This is actually the mechanism to take away people's will.
That's right.
That's what happened there in Soviet Union, and most of the people who were raised there, they were taken. Their will was taken away. This is why they weren't really thinking about it. They are comfortable with this. They want to get this back, where everything is decided for them. You see why Russians want to be a part of empire, because they mostly don't have any will. They have that amazing Soviet Union given thing. It is so much simpler to live when everything is given to you, and you need not to work hard to earn everything. Of course, Soviet people were working even harder, but that's because this was another side of that slavery machine regime, and system that was built up when on one side they were given everything, but on the other side they were exploited, fully exploited.
As you're talking, it struck me that there's a very similar effect to what prisoners experience, and prisoners very often, if they've been in for a long time, have a hard time adjusting to the outside to, make decisions because they were told do this. Now it's time to eat. Now it's time to do that. Now it's time to go to bed. Now, and it's hard to wrestle with freedom if you've been essentially in a slave or prison kind of system for a period of time. That's why I asked about the older people.
Yeah, yeah. So mostly older people will never want. They will choose, unfortunately, slavery over freedom. But a lot of people changed their minds, and I think this, for some reason, big part of Ukrainians, even they were raised in Soviet Union and lived there, they still know the other way. I don't know. This is some Ukrainian part of, like, this is the part of Ukrainian character, of Ukrainian nation, that we have this freedom and will in us. And even when Ukrainians lived under Soviet Union occupation for 77 years? Oh no, more. Like from 1918, right? Until
Something in that neighborhood, 17, 18. It was during World War I.
Yeah, so around 77 years, I think. So that still didn't kill that freedom and that will in Ukrainians. That's fascinating, and I always admired and inspired by that.
Okay, you told me you got out of Dodge, and you got out of there, and it was good because you could have been pulled off the street. What percentage of people that were like you that stayed were then just sucked into the army involuntarily? I don't mean even that they, this was the only thing I had going on, but then, people against their will, like pulled into the army.
I must say, in my bubble, everyone escaped, and those who from my bubble stayed, I just stopped talking to them because they became pro-Russian, like openly pro-Russian, something like that. But I think a lot of people who weren't just thinking about it and who weren't looking for an escape, they were grabbed from the street. For example, my friend who was pro-Ukrainian, who actually stayed, he risked to be grabbed. This is why he was sitting in his apartment for 3 months when full-scale invasion began. Can you imagine? It's just like even in prison you can walk some in the yard, you know. But he maximum he could do is open a window and have a cigarette, and he was always at home for 3 months. Then he found a way to get out through Russia. There was a way to pay not that much money, I would say a few $100s back then. Then prices started growing significantly, but he paid a few $100s and managed to escape through Russia. But if he stayed longer, chances to get out were smaller and smaller, and I think at some point he would be grabbed on the street too.
Assuming that we get to the place where, and I believe eventually Ukraine will prevail. But assuming we get to this place, and you now had these oblasts that have been occupied, what do you think reunion will look like? I mean, is it going to be like an East Germany, West Germany kind of thing, or I mean, like what will that look like? It's going to be kind of weird.
Well, man, it's going to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges for Ukrainian society. We'll have to figure out, of course, you see, as it was in Kherson, most of the pro-Russian elements, they will just run away to Russia together with Russians. That huge so-called evacuation, the running of rats will happen. And those who were just like those, who weren't leaning to one side or another, who just wanted to be left alone, they will stay. And those who weren't working for the governmental structures of Russians, those don't need to worry about anything. And those who, for some reason, foolishly will stay, though they worked, well, they got this on themselves. You see,
yeah.
So
there'll be a lot of war crimes trials on the backside of this, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. But some of the people who weren't openly pro-Russian there, but they were under influence of Russian propaganda, because the biggest mass of people are easily influenced by any propaganda. That's how this world works. They will need to be shown by us, by our government, by just volunteers. I am already thinking about some work maybe that I might be involved in, or maybe a project that I may start to reintegrate them, like to talk to them, to show them real facts, to just show them the truth, how it was and how Russia fooled them and what Russia really was. You see, I think this work must be done, and this is not my idea. This is the idea of Volodymyr Zolkin. You know who he is, right? And he's saying that this work must be done, and it must be done already, because there are a lot of prisoners of war sitting in Ukrainian camps and in pretrial detention centers from those regions. Russia doesn't want to take them because Russia doesn't even need their own people, Russians, except for prisoners, right? For 200 prisoners in the latest exchange.
Well, unless you're in another country and they speak Russian, and that can be used as a pretext to invade. That's when they need them. So
yeah, and they will use them as cannon fodder, just like they used them in 2022 and 2023.
So you mentioned propaganda. What's the worst of the propaganda that has seeped into these people's minds? Like what are the narratives that have really stuck with them?
That we, Ukrainians, or Ukrainian government, Ukrainian military, were bombing Donbass for 8 years.
Okay.
Even, I mean, like most of those people, in Donetsk and Luhansk regions, they know that there was no Donbin for 8 years. There was just first year or something, but that really stick to in their minds. And some of those prisoners of war who I recognize simple workers from that area who were influenced by propaganda, they still think that Ukraine was dropping the bomb back then, that famous plane in 2014 was dropping the bomb on some of the administrations, and there was no signs that, like, there's no proof that it was not the Russian plane. But Russian propaganda convinced them in this, and what propaganda convinces people in is really, really hard to get out of their heads.
Yeah.
So this is one of the worst narratives. Well, it's a group of narratives, right?
So is Russia doing false flags in order to create more of this kind of narrative?
Constantly. They were doing these stages. They staged so many things, and they keep doing this. You see, in 2022 and 2023, they actually bombed Donetsk many times, just to show that we keep doing that, just to draw more attention to that, because they need to convince their own people too, and people there. Mm-hmm. They need to kill people in Donetsk and Luhansk regions to convince them that Ukraine, just to make them angry, to convince them that Ukraine keeps doing that, to sustain their propaganda.
Okay, so that the Ukrainian government is killing the people in Donetsk. What about the language issue? That seems like that one really seems to get it's a burr under the saddle of the Russians for some reason I can't quite understand. It seems to be really high on their list of they're oppressing Russian speakers. Is that one of the bigger ones, or is that lower down the totem pole?
That one is actually, for them, like, they cannot explain where they cannot prove that narrative that Russian speakers being oppressed. There are interviews of Zolkin with collaborators. This shows you so much about what you're talking about right now, about that Russian propaganda, about those narratives, how they work, how they stuck in them. I would love to translate all of them, and I think with them it's just like 70 interviews. I think it's doable under my lifetime, so I will do that. But with prisoners of war, it's already like 700 interviews, so probably, who knows, maybe I'll translate all of them someday. But
we could probably crowdsource that. I'm sure there are people that would love to help that speak Russian and English. And by the way, I appreciate what you do, because you're talking to an English audience. When there's the amount of information that we have in the English world is very small. I mean, there's only a couple dozen YouTubers that are really carrying the torch here. You don't see hardly anything in the news. And so it's critical that someone like you can translate and help us understand what's going on.
Thank you, Doctor. I want to talk about this also. I was saying to you that people need to know that Russians want this, really, like, deeply. Somewhere in their heads, almost every Russian wants Soviet Union to be restored. I believe that it is something about 80% of Russians, maybe even more. I wouldn't say more, but 80% definitely, in my opinion. So those Russians talk. They, even when they try to fool someone and try to fool the interviewer, they still you can still see it. You can read under the between the lines, right? You can see what they're leaning to and all of that, how they're scared, and how they actually have nostalgia for Soviet Union and all that stuff. So this is why I think it is really important for people around the world to listen to those occupiers, to listen also to collaborators, because this information is very, very valuable. I would say 90% of those interviews, they are eye-opening. They are, even for me as a Ukrainian, I realized so many things just watching those interviews. This is why I want to share this information. By the way, to your viewers, to your audience, I want to invite everyone to watch the latest dub, because it was restricted 18 years plus, and instead of regular 100,000 views by this moment, we have 1,500 views.
The latest what?
Latest dub. I dub them. I'm not just translate
Right.
those
Yeah.
interviews. So latest interview was posted on my channel on Saturday. Yeah, so it's been what, 6 days? Yeah, five to 6 days, and it is very underrated. People, like many more people, usually are watching that. So I'll ask everyone on your channel to go check it out, and you won't regret this, guys. My
Yeah, I'll put
community
that in
can
the link
confirm.
below.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
So, yeah, getting back to those interviews, I just wanted to say that I am planning to translate all of them. Anyway, how much time it will take, it doesn't matter, because I'm really passionate about this work. I really want to do more of it, but my daily job is making me skip a lot.
I understand, man. It's wearing me out, but I figure if people can be in a bit of earth on the front line freezing in the snow, I can at least do my part,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, so I understand.
I just have actually a goal, a plan, how to speed up this process, how to do what? How to do it more efficiently and provide more of that content. I actually am already building a team of people who will help me with subtitles, with dubbing too. But for now, dubbing is the easiest part. Subtitles, that's a nightmare. To make 10 minutes of subtitles, good subtitles, translated like properly, not the auto captions and all of that, you need to spend approximately 4 to 5 hours. And yeah, and oh no, it's also with dubbing already, yeah, but to make subtitles it's about 3 hours, something like
Wow.
that. So yeah, 3 hours for those subtitles, man. And it's actually considering using ChatGPT and CapCut to create the automatic captions. So this process is already automated. This was
And then try to get it on the right parts as they talk. Is
yeah.
that what you're talking about? Yeah.
This is not the hardest part. The hardest part, I think, is to make those sentences proper, because ChatGPT doesn't understand the context. And this is the thing why I started doing this, because automatic captions, they don't provide any context, and 50 or maybe even 60% of the meaning of what they're talking about is lost there. Details are very important in those conversations, and those details are getting totally lost with automatic caption. This is why it should be a person reviewing after CapCut,
Right.
then reviewing after ChatGPT, and anyone who was doing just English subtitles could know that to make 10 minutes just of English subtitles without any translation, it will take an hour or something like that. People
Yeah.
can confirm. Maybe you can even confirm that.
Well, so I don't speak these other languages, and people are like, "Well, you have no excuse. There's Google Translate. You could translate everything." But I don't know if it's wrong. I can't. I don't want to hang
Yes.
my hat on some turn of phrase that could be wrong. So I'm very cautious with that sort of thing. Hey,
Yeah.
tell viewers on your channel, my channel, tell us what have been your big takeaways from watching these videos, because I want my viewers to go to your channel and tell them how to, what to look for Rick the Ukrainian, and then what are your big takeaways in these videos, like what stuck out to you the most?
Okay, first of all is that Russians will do this anyway. They will come to Ukraine They will keep coming for years, and nothing will stop them, and they will be doing what is told. This is
Mhm.
this is the tragic thing, not only for us but also for them. I don't care
Mhm.
much anymore, and I actually didn't care even in the first month, but now even more. um, but the thing is that they have no will, and I'm not sure that um, those who are easily taken and put into buses, planes, and then here to Ukraine, and then to the positions, they are useless in resistance. They
Yeah,
have,
it seems like a surprising lack of agency.
yeah.
I just don't. I mean, how can you just think? Well, they told me I had to do like. There's, it's like something is lacking somehow. I don't know how to describe it, but
Yeah, this is. I would tell you so many things if I get prepared. You know, if I write something down. Oh, actually, I had it somewhere. Maybe I closed that document and forgot it. But I think I might find some points that I was. Yeah, actually, first I found it. First, captivity doesn't teach them anything. Man, getting into captivity doesn't mean that propaganda will be vanishing. That if they see how their government, how their army is treating them, if they didn't meet any Nazis, they won't. They will keep believing that there are still somewhere there are Nazis. They just didn't meet them. They keep believing this shit. They keep believing the all the narratives, and even when you give them facts, that propaganda is sitting in their heads, it keeps working to keep them believing. You know, they keep believing all that shit. So this is a very important observation, that unfortunately getting into captivity doesn't mean that when they come back to Russia, they will start telling truths to everyone. They will start
right.
claiming that there are no Nazis here. And before I go to the next point, maybe you have something to comment about this one.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that the Nazi narrative, how high was that in the propaganda scale? So I mean, we were talking about other issues that were high important propaganda things. Like, is that on the top, or where is that in their order of understanding?
That's the base. Like, they
Okay.
base all of their beliefs, all of their convictions. Is it the word?
Hmm.
Yeah, on this, what they heard on the television. Another good take, I would say, is that television for them is the ultimate truth, and there is no reason to not believe the television, because
Yeah, right.
even
There's
after,
no opposition to tell you otherwise,
yeah,
right?
and even
So
if there is opposition, they still will choose between those two. They will choose their television, because I think this is also, it also comes from Soviet Union, when they were convinced. Yeah, when there was just one television, and one, there was a an iron curtain, yes, that didn't let any other information to pour in.
right.
So they just got used to that. Okay, next point is bad education, mostly ignorance, is encouraged in Russia. Yeah, I think you know that too, right?
That resonates with me.
Yeah, a lot of them tell those stories how it is hard to get a job or education, and how they were forced to go to some low-paid job or to become criminals, and such a crazy stories you hear from those interviews. I gotta bring more to all of you guys, because especially some criminal slang that's being used there is making those interviews extremely hard to properly translate and to give you the
Mhm.
understanding of what they're talking about and how crazy those stories are. So another point is Putin is a saint, he's never the one to blame. They cannot even assume that all their savageness is their official politics. What do you think about this?
I've detected that there's this reverence for Putin, and it seems like the reverence there is because they want to reclaim a former glory or self-esteem as a country that they have lost since the fall of the Soviet Union, if I can use those kind of terms to describe it.
Yeah.
And that seems like he's been the guy trying to restore that, and so they really do have an affinity for Putin in many regards.
Yeah, and it's like with Tsars. He is their Tsar, and I can't call him a president because he rules them as just an infinite ruler, and he actually calls himself the predecessor of those Tsars. Can predecessor could be used here?
Predecessor comes before, but I know what you meant. He's the guy that follows his, yeah.
Okay, yeah, the follower. Or like, same. I said it in Ukrainian. Okay, I'm starting to get tired. Okay, so just the last thing I want to say about it, if it is, it is just unimaginable for them to think that Putin is to blame. Most of them will lean towards, no, he just being lied to. All those politicians and, he's, he is their superiors and they are his subordinates. Yes. It's his subordinates who just constantly lie to him and who are bad, but Tsar Batyushka is just the best, and he is a perfect and saint, and he cannot be judged.
So part of that makes sense to me. I've been to Lithuania, Romania, Bulgaria, even Belarus, believe it or not. And what I observed is if somebody feels like their leader is attacked, they feel like they're attacked. And I think that's part of the Soviet hangover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of what's going on in that dynamic.
Yeah, another good point is that the right of force is the only thing they understand. They think,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they think that it is normal to invade other countries. It is normal to dictate other countries what they will do, what you want. It's just goes deep in. It is very deep in their minds, and they don't understand. The respect, they don't understand the democracy, or probably fair international relations, friendship.
Yeah.
They don't know any of that. Like most of them. Of course, not every occupier is like that, but I would say 80% they understand only this because that's how they've been taught.
Mm-hmm. More people need to see those videos.
Yeah, man. That's not even. I've done 10 of them. By the way, in my Discord community, there are some of them that are exclusive just there because I cannot post them on YouTube. They're getting instantly blocked by
what they say,
by the copyright algorithm. Right. Because Zolkin actually restricted the ability to repost his videos from March 3rd of 2023. So everything that was posted after that date on his channel, I cannot repost on my channel. So for now, I can only dub those old interviews, like almost a year old and older. But I still do some of the, with the limited time I have, I do some of the great ones and I put them into Discord because there is no copyright restriction there yet. And people can go and watch it there. So there's one collaborator there already and one prisoner of war who is really arrogant and who is, he's 21 years old or 22 or something like that. But man, he's such an imperialist, he's such a fascist, and you can see it in his eyes. And he was raised perfectly for Russia. Like, that's the character they need. He's so arrogant with Zolkin. He's sitting like like that. One of his legs is lying on the other one. He is super relaxed, and he is abusing, that he won't be touched in Ukrainian captivity, actually. So I recommend to go watch this one on Discord too. So I was saying that this is just a 10th interview. No, I started working on 11s today, but I've posted 10 of them, and they are not giving you, I would say, even 2% of understanding of the whole picture, because only watching 700 of them, or 800 probably already posted there, gives you the full understanding, and this is not the whole truth yet, not the whole facts, and considering also that they are mostly lying, leaning, and just trying to seem better than they are. This is even a smaller part of all the truth.
Yeah. Hey, I know we're running out of time here with what we had said, but I do want to talk about your friend and mine, Greg Terry, who's doing excellent work in Ukraine, and he's traveling around. He's got we had this fundraiser. We're up to $156,000 in that fundraiser, which has just made me involuntarily giggle at times, because I don't consider myself a fundraiser, and I just was amazed at the outpouring of support. And you're getting to see him giving away tourniquets and things like that. It's amazing. Chocolate to little kids, tourniquets to soldiers, things along those lines. You interviewed Greg. Johnny Pierce had him on. That's how I actually connected with him, after Johnny Pierce. Somebody was like, "Hey, you gotta see this guy," and that's when we linked up. And then I think it's great that a number of YouTubers simultaneously working, together. I mean, we can't just, this is my issue, that's my issue. That's no, we have to all pull together and support. And I know that you know him, and we'll be getting to connect with him too. And I just wanted to raise that issue.
Yeah, actually, that's how we met together with you, through Greg Terry. We have a chance to finally meet with Greg tomorrow. By the way, a few things to say, but I gotta finish with that first. Greg Terry let us know each other, and that's how it works. Good people help other people to know each other, and communities start to mix, and that's how it should work, because only in unity, only in knowing more, knowing better, and connecting, I think that's the secret of success and victory, in this case, of Ukraine.
There's this synergistic math here that's going on. If I introduce you to all of my audience, and vice versa, it doesn't hurt me at all. They get to know you. If they want to hear from you, they can hear from you, and that actually adds to them. And I described it like this when we were talking about the fundraiser in the first day. I think it was the first day. I'm using Greg so that I can have an impact here. This was not something that I had the ability to do before. So I linked to him so that I can help my viewers be able to contribute there in a way that I never would have been. I was a little, worried about, I don't really want money flowing through me. No, give to him. He's doing it. He was using me because I had a larger audience. Great. Our users, our subscribers are using us to see where they can contribute. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful thing, all this synergy that is going into this.
Yeah, this is the consensual using of each other, right? Mm-hmm. And it is very beneficial for everyone. It's just a win-win, and win-win again. Okay, so I'll take this chance to also ask your viewers to check out my NAFO truck fundraiser campaign. Also, thank you for helping me out with the previous one. Before you know who am I, right? You was asked to promote my campaign, and I think your people also contributed and also helped with that. So thank you to all viewers and members of doctors community, professors community, or how can I call you better, Professor?
You can call me Darren. It doesn't matter to me. That's my first name.
Okay, okay,
Last
Darren.
name is Gerdes. It's funny when Greg Terry started talking, he was calling me Professor Gerdes, and he was like, saying it like a German would. It is German of derivation. I don't even pronounce my own name right. I mean, that's probably no surprise to anybody in my community. I slaughter names all the time, but like we just call it Gerdes, like that's how we pronounce it since we Americanized it or whatever. I mean, just not intentionally, it's just how we pronounced it. So don't worry about that. I'll answer to anything.
We also have Andrew Mercado there in the chat, calling this force multiplication or force multiplying.
That's exactly right. He's spot on. Exactly.
Yes, and he's been a great contributor to that. He was meeting me with many other pro-Ukrainian YouTubers, so thank you, Andrew. And by the way, guys, we want to have a stream together with Andrew soon, so yeah, look out for that.
He has done great work raising funds and going to Ukraine and all those things.
Yeah.
I've been jealous of him for the contribution that he's been able to make. And until I linked up with Greg, I haven't been able to really do that because that's just not my skill set. I know myself, and this is the lane I'm in. So I had to link with Greg in order to actually contribute. So
yeah, we can actually think of maybe some projects together too in the future. Like these NAFO trucks, they are super easy to contribute, and they practically do everything except for fundraising, and they also help with that too. So we do the least part of it. We just mobilize our communities to help NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade to raise money. Our communities are working together. Many communities helped me with the previous truck, like yours, like Andrew's community and Starsky's community. This was crazy how in just one day, in 24 hours, they raised the last 7,000, and even beyond that, even exceeded the goal by 1,000. This was crazy. And so this is a great initiative. So I just wanted to promote it a bit and ask people to go to the description of your video, because I will ask you to put it there if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it.
Thank you. So another thing to quickly mention is that, do I need to mention it now? I wonder. Okay, I'll mention it. Tomorrow is my birthday, and the best gift for me is going to be the donation for the armed forces of Ukraine. To let you know that I'm not only raising funds together with my community, I'm not doing it alone, not to NAFO trucks only, but we have our own fundraisers, and every week we are raising funds for drones, or cars, or even the sniper rifle last week for my friend El Greco, who serves in the Border Guard Brigade with a good scope, 338 caliber, and this week his brother-in-arms, whose call sign is Coconut, he actually he bought himself, guys, yeah, that's an announcement, this fundraiser is closed. Yesterday El Greco called me and said that Coconut already ordered a scope a bit cheaper than was the goal, so we don't even need to finish the fundraiser and raise 192,000 hryvnias. 143,000 that were raised is already enough. So yeah, that's crazy. This community has been very generous, and it is growing, and people, I see that, a lot of people around the world, and here in Ukraine especially, they talk about support is being lower than usual, than earlier, or support, like it's harder to raise money, harder to close fundraisers. I see the opposite. I see how people are mobilizing around it, just like your and Greg's project. You raised a tremendous amount of money. I know the spoiler. I know that you will be given it a bit later, but the sum that was like even 5 or 7 days ago was already crazy. And well done, guys. You're doing a great job. Thank you for that.
I think that speaks to the frustration that people feel. They want to be able to give. They want to be able to contribute. They're seeing the government's not being able to get along, and the desperate need is still there. And so this is an outlet that they feel is safe in order for them to have a part in it. And I think that's what's behind the scenes, like the mechanisms that's causing even more contributions right now.
Yeah, people see the impact they are doing, and it only motivates them. And I think, actually, yeah, that's why I am pretty transparent on my streams, and I usually mention every donation, donate money right during the stream, showing it on the screen, and all the progress bars that we have in Monobank here, they are updated and they're on the screen too. So it motivates people too. They see that it is trustworthy. They see that everything is getting there, that soldiers are receiving that equipment, and they are making videos and photos thanking them. Nothing can be better when you see that your contribution is actually helps saving someone's life there. I think it's very important. Last thing I wanted to mention before I finish this fundraising talk. So I was saying that I have a dream to to build a team, and I'm already doing this for this project, for dubs, for translation of those interviews, and for me to do that, I need to start working as a full-time YouTuber. For that, I need to quit my job, but for that, I need to earn from YouTube. So one way to do it is way to help me with that is to subscribe to my Buy Me a Coffee for just $3 monthly, and I actually will start a challenge soon with that. But when I have a sum needed for a month to survive for, I will just quit my job and start working only on this. Streaming and fundraising is just a part of it. Second part is doing those interviews, and that's what I really want to do, because you gotta know more, guys, because just 1% of all of this, and this will be a great help to, I would say, to Ukraine in this war, when people around the world, when more people will see what Russians really are and what they think of, and all those points that I was telling you, you probably can hear it from me, but you won't realize it like that good when you realize it yourself by hearing those people, right?
That's right.
Okay, so also we'll send you the link of Buy Me a Coffee if you don't mind, to help me achieve that goal too.
Well, hey man, thank you for allowing me to come on. I'm sorry, as your viewer said, I turned into me interviewing you.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
I was just fascinated by your experience, having lived where you lived in Donbass, and understanding, getting the context of what that was like. And I think that did a valuable service for all of our viewers.
Yeah, thank you, man. I actually appreciate that you took the lead, because I usually don't like to interview people. I like to be interviewed, so thank you. This was perfect. Exactly what I needed. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming today. This was an amazing conversation. I really want to do more of them together with you. You're an amazing interlocutor, Professor. Thank you. Or Darren. I gotta start calling you Darren.
Whichever, call me what you want.
Okay. So yeah, I also want to thank everyone who came to watch today. There were a lot of people. Though it was just a sudden stream, and not on weekend but on weekday. Almost 200 people were watching us for the last hour and a half, like simultaneously. That's crazy. Thank you guys. You made the stream unforgettable, even though I wasn't addressing any of your questions to Professor Gerdes, and I was not answering your questions. I'm sorry, but I was driven away by this conversation. Really, I love how it goes. You know, when the flow is natural and you just talk and talk, and I have a satisfaction from this conversation. So thank you very much for being here, guys. This was just amazing. Maybe you have something to add before I press the end stream button.
No, just let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, let's do it again. And Slava Ukraini. Bye, guys.
Aram Slava.
And bye.